Stone and slate, muddy roads and grey skies. That was the world you'd known. Even the pristine luxury you'd witnessed at the palace had been tinted dreary by King Endeavor's rule. So standing at the apex of a landscape that held more color than you'd seen in your entire life, quite literally stole the breath out of your lungs. You stood for an eternity, just gazing out into the pocket of paradise, and didn't notice that Katsuki had already begun to walk away. It was Deku's tiny protesting whispers that brought your attention back to him. "Deku, I already brought them here." Katsuki snarled at the little fae. "What more do you want from me?" Deku fluttered in front of Katsuki's face, hands on hips, and leaned forward as he twittered away. Katsuki swatted at him like he was a pesky fly. "Deal with it yourself, you flying rat." Katsuki continued down a worn-out path that wound beside the waterfall. Deku fumed as he went, but soon let out a small defeated huff. He zoomed back to you, diving down to your hand and tugging it up. You lift your hand, and he pulls. "Do you want me to follow you?" you ask. Deku nods rapidly and flies to the end of the waterfall. You take note of the strange way the rock beneath your feet fit around the large stream of gushing water. Logically, you knew you'd entered through the cave gateway, and therefore the ground you stood on must be an extension of the cave. However, from where you stood, it was as though a deliberate ring had been carved around the rushing water, one that did not look stable enough to stand on. You hurry after Deku, your torso twisting in pain. You grimace and bring a hand to your burning wound. Deku flutters in front of you, his tiny eyes holding concern, but he drops back to your hand and pulls again. You look in the direction he's tugging and bite your lip. It was an uphill path that followed the curve of the hill. You gulp as you look down. A small tilt on your shaky legs would send you cascading to a rough and rocky death over the edge. You meet Deku's eyes. "Are you sure?" He nodded, earnestly. You swallow. "Okay, lead the way." The climb was strenuous, and would have winded you even if you weren't severely injured. A few meters, and you were leaning against the hillside, gasping for breath. Izuku fluttered close, waiting and watchful, his little hands reaching out as though he wanted to help. "Is wherever you're taking me far? Because I don't think I'll make it all the way," you say while sucking in breaths. Izuku shook his head and pointed up the path. His mouth worked, but your ears were ignorant to the explanation he gave. You nod along dumbly, until he halts and tilts his head down sheepishly, realizing you couldn't understand him. You chuckle. "It's okay." Your eyes meet the path warily, before you push up and continue forward. You're up a few more meters, breathing rapidly and about to take your second breather when a hand grabs your arm. You jerk in surprise. "Hey, it's still me, just human-sized," the figure next to you rushes to say. You blink at him, astounded that the little fae that had fit into your palm not too long ago now stood a few inches taller than you. Deku smiled reassuringly, if not a little nervous. "Are you going to freak out? I hear humans tend to freak out quite a bit when they see something different." You shake your head slowly. Not freaking out," you say. "Deku, how are you?" "I will show you as soon as we get to the top," Deku says, his hands at your elbow urging you forward. "Oh, and my name is not Deku, it's Izuku, Midoriya Izuku. Deku is just Kachan's nickname for me." You nod, allowing Izuku to support you. Though larger and laced with fine muscle, he appeared petite. Most of him was exposed fair skin. However, his lean form did possess areas coated with healthy moss and veiny, spidering veins for modesty. His wings spanned proportionally, the silver transparency catching the light in little glimmers. He was an extremely pretty man that did not seem much older than yourself. But how could you know how fays age? The tortuous uphill hike ends abruptly at a craterous gap cut out of the hillside, where within, a hidden treasure lay waiting. Tucked inside the immense pocket of space, that was as large as the throne room in the castle, was a pool of water, something simple and plain and would otherwise be unassuming, if not for the way it glowed. The crystal waters were indigo and rippled lightly to reveal shades of violet and ceruleum. You could taste magic on your tongue, felt the pulse of the pool's energy buzz in the air. It was as though being in its presence alone gave you strength. Pinium sonorium, Deku said. You glance at him, and he smiles knowingly. The pool of dreams. They were gifts from the ancient Fae, those that became tired of their immortal lives and condensed their collective magic into these pools to safeguard future generations. It exudes magic. It's how I am able to take on this form. And if you enter, it'll heal your wound. That's amazing, you say in awe. It is. And a closely guarded secret, he says with a pointed look. Right. I won't tell anyone, I promise. You say, candid. Izuku's eyes glimmer with mirth. I know. I can tell. He guided you to the pool's edge, which held no true form. Come. It is best if you remove your clothing before entering. You flushed. Is that necessary? The magic works better with direct contact, so you must remove the bandages as well, Izuku says, absent-mindedly. He looked at you expectantly when you stood at one of the pool's many curves. Okay, could you turn around? You say nervously. Izuku tilted his head with mild confusion, but agreed anyway. Sure. He turns around and you begin to remove your clothing, not without difficulty. Do humans never expose themselves without clothes? Izuku asks curiously. Well, not commonly, you answer. It's just not something you do with someone you're not familiar with. Izuku hums. Fays have no such reservations. I am sorry if I offended you. Not at all, you say lightly. You dip your foot into the sparkling blue, tentatively, and gasp at the enamorating high that rushed through you. The shimmering water was both warm and cool and comfortable, an experience similar to the one time you'd been lucky enough to feel the lavishly crisp, silken blankets that fit onto the prince's bed. You sunk into the peculiar water, feeling it hum in acceptance and flutter in greeting. It invaded your wound, coating it with a minty freshness you'd normally taste on your tongue. You relaxed into the feeling, coaxed into serenity, and longed to stay amongst the enchanting calm forever. Izuku fluttered to the other end of the pool, probably trying to give you privacy. It's nice, isn't it? This is one of the few magic condensed areas still in existence. What happened to the others? You ask, intrigued. Izuku smiles sadly. Humans? Actually, the fairy sanctuary that Kachan and I come from was destroyed. We were lucky to make it here. Has it always been the two of you? Izuku's eyes were downcast. No, the sanctuary we come from held hundreds, but no one else survived. You stilled with somberness. Kachan's mother, Izuku continued, tried to save the sanctuary. She came from a long line of guardians, and it's all he's ever wanted to do. When they attacked, he fought so hard to help her. But we were so young. She ordered us to leave, and I knew that Katsuki would die trying to save the burning sanctuary alongside the others. I had to drag him tooth and nail. Izuku, I'm so... Don't apologize, human. You're not at fault. Still, I hate that happened to you, you say earnestly, and then hesitantly ask, why did you want Katsuki to save me? Humans took everything from you. Izuku's eyes were fond with memory. Kachan doesn't like to acknowledge this, but his father was human. Really? You exclaim in surprise. Yeah, and he fought alongside the Guardian to protect the sanctuary. Yes, humans took everything from us, but I don't believe every human is alike. You don't seem like them. I feel you are kind, like he was. You shift under his scrutiny. That's some high expectations you have of me there. I hope I can prove them right. Izuku giggled, light and airy. I'm sure you will. And in any case, if I'm wrong, Kachan will just kill you anyway. You laughed despite the vague threat. That's reassuring. Are you healed? Izuku asked, glancing down and back up. May I check? You bring your arms to cover yourself. Oh right, sorry. Humans are particular to nudity. I need to remember that. Here, use this to dry yourself. It's one of Kachan's old rags. And this is one of his shirts. Yours is quite bloody. I'm not sure you'd want to put that back on. Izuku flutters over, keeping his eyes politely away, and places a large rag on the pool's edge. You wonder distantly where the cloth items had come from. You lift yourself out of the crystalline water regretfully, and then marvel at what used to be your wound. Where there had been a bloody puncture in your torso was only a small scar. You pat the rag over the wound, prodding for an illusion or trickery, but there was no pain. The pool of dreams had healed you. You eventually dry yourself through your astonishment and lift the large shirt over your head. You cringe at the thought of Katsuki finding that Izuku had given you his clothes. You could basically see the many shades of anger that would pass through his face. You tell Izuku that you're finished, and he faces you. Carefully, he lifts the shirt to just above the little scar. He frowns as he drops the shirt to hang loosely on your frame. If we had gotten you here sooner, it wouldn't have left a scar. I'm sorry. It's alright, you say dismissively, thankful to be healed at all. We should stay close to the magic pool, Izuku says as they move away from the water. That way I won't shift back. You and Izuku sit at the edge of the cave, overlooking the fairy sanctuary as you rested on the soft grass on the hill. The pool of dreams had left you buzzing with energy. The refreshing feeling was unmatched. Movement down the path to the waterfall catches your eye. It was Katsuki, curling up in wolf form just beside it. Does he always sleep there? You ask Izuku inquisitively. Kachan takes his job as guardian very seriously. He likes to stay close to the gate, Izuku explains. If you'd like, I could show you the sanctuary tomorrow. I mean, if that's okay. The view from up on the hill was amazing, but the idea of walking amongst the beauty elated you. Great, it will be nice to have company. Kachan never wants to walk with me. It was strange how a place with no moon or sun could be so bright. Perhaps not the expansive illumination of the sole star in the sky, but the fairy sanctuary possessed the subtle allure of twilight. Nearly everything in the sanctuary gave off its own light. The vines that wrapped around the trees glowed in consecutive green dots. Flowers that sprouted haphazardly were elegant, brilliantly luminescent, and varying in color. You couldn't help but lean down and caress the petals of your favorite. Even the water that flowed from the waterfall glimmered and shone as you walked alongside it, while Izuku led. Altogether, the quiet gleam that radiated from each beauty in the sanctuary felt like a family working together to make this place a home. It made you feel warmly content. Izuku fluttered ahead of you, halting every now and then to gesture at a tree or a little critter, a new flower or a stone. You weren't sure his mouth had stopped working since you traveled down. Despite being unable to hear him, you smiled and nodded along. He seemed brighter as he talked, and talked, and talked. You assumed that Katsuki must not have been enough company for the little fae. You hadn't seen the wolf shifter yet. Perhaps he was in the cave on the other side of the gateway. You're trailing your hands along the light-spotted vines, the green cool to the touch. This place is amazing, Izuku. Thank you for sharing it with me. Izuku smiled brightly and then ushered you forward again. You walk a little more before Izuku stops. He pushes both his palms down as though patting the air. Do you want me to kneel down? You ask. He nods and then holds a finger to his lips. And be quiet, you say. Okay. Izuku leads you as you crawl to a cluster of bushes that held dark green leaves with white luminous berries. Though they did not look edible, the contrasting light and dark still made for a marvelous shrub. But that was not what Izuku wanted to show you. He flew under your chin and moved it above the bushes. Amongst the thicket of whiteberry bushes were grazing unicorns, and they appeared nothing like how you envisioned unicorns to be. Treading carefully amongst the bushes, the horse-like creatures would easily tower over the most robust castle horses. Their coats were pure black, like the most pigmented ink, their eyes sullen, pupilless voids, and as dark as a bottomless pit. The only fair part of them were their horns. The sharp and swirl spike emitted white light, not unlike the berries, but brighter and more brilliant. You're in awe as you watch the majestic creatures drift amongst the thicket, holding their heads high with dignity, like a royal. Izuku had landed comfortably at your shoulder, looking very pleased with himself. You grin at him, but then something yanks you back sharply, and you gasp. You're pushed back harshly into a tree as a calloused hand clamps over your mouth. Shut up, Katsuki growls, his sharp, ruby eyes darting from you and then back to the thicket. Then he releases you, grabs your hand, and tugs you away from the unicorns. Izuku is quick to go to Katsuki's ear, speaking frantically, and you stare in confusion. I don't want to hear it, Deku, Katsuki snarls. Those things are dangerous. I won't have blood spilt here because of your fucking idiocy. Blood spilt? You ask in shock. I wasn't going to hurt them. Katsuki let out a raucous, mocking laugh. I'm not talking about you, pathetic human. Unicorns are not fluffy pets like your war horses. They're vicious and extremely hostile to humans. Something that Deku knows about. His eyes flick dangerously to Izuku. Izuku's shoulders drop. His expression held guilt and contrition as he faced Katsuki. That's what I thought, Katsuki snaps. They've passed the waterfall now, nearing the Pool of Dreams. Okay, can you let me go now? Your claws are pricking me, you complain. Katsuki releases you, but then scans your body. You look all healed up. Perhaps it's time you run back to your own kind, human. Izuku grows to human size swiftly, and shakes his head in protest. Kachan, they can't leave now. The other humans might still be hunting them. Having them here is a danger to everything, Deku. How do you not see that? Katsuki shouted. His fist tightened at his sides. Izuku seemed to hesitate before speaking, but he steeled his stance and said, Your father was human, Kachan. Can you imagine what might have happened if your mother turned him away when he needed help? Katsuki lurched at Izuku, his crimson eyes wild and predatory, and his pointed teeth gleamed as though he would attack the Fae. Don't compare my father to the other humans, he said coldly. He was twice the person this dumbass or any other filthy human will ever be. He clipped Izuku in the shoulder as he stormed away. You breathe a sigh of relief. You were briefly afraid that you'd have to come between them. Izuku sags as he watches Katsuki walk away. I'm sorry you had to see that. And that I took you to see the unicorns. I just don't have many people to talk to anymore. You understood. It must get lonely for a Fae who'd once lived amongst hundreds, only to have one standoffish person left. Don't worry about it, Izuku. I'm sorry for causing you so much trouble. He's just protective of this place, Izuku said, as they walked the rest of the way to the Pool of Dreams. His parents gave their lives to protect the last one, and I think he just wants to match their sacrifice. Make it worth its magnitude. You stare down the way you'd come, contemplating those heavy words. The fairy sanctuary looked in a constant state of near night. Therefore, you were forced to rely on your own internal clock to tell what time of day it was. You were a tad bit tired, but not by much, which told you that it must be the early night outside. Izuku was already asleep when you saw Katsuki heading through the waterfall gateway. You sucked in a stealing breath before venturing to follow. You could not live here at war with the creature that guards it. You pushed through the vapor-like water, the cooling feeling refreshing and calming to your nerves. You followed the path to the fire you'd woken up to on the first night. Katsuki was there, ripping into a fresh kill with large claws and sharp teeth. Though massacred beyond recognition, you assume it was a deer judging by its size. You swallow, realizing perhaps this was not your smartest idea. The shifter could kill you on a whim, if he felt like. Katsuki spots you, red eyes pinning you to where you stood. He swipes a hand over his mouth, smearing blood across his lips. "What do you want, human?" he demands. You approach the fire unsteadily and sit on the opposite side of Katsuki, using the flames as a barrier, even though you knew it would not protect you. "I wanted to apologize," you say, meeting his eyes. Katsuki narrows his glare, studying you critically. You continue, "I know that this must be very difficult for you, allowing me to stay here. Izuku told me your parents sacrificed their lives for a place like this, and I imagine that letting me be here is risking everything that they put their lives on the line for." Katsuki crunched into a bone as he watched you, the sound impolitely letting your imagination run at the possibility of your bones ending up between Katsuki's jaws. "I wanted you to know that I'm not going to stay here forever. Only a couple of weeks. Hopefully the palace will forget about me by then. I wouldn't want to put this place in danger. It's beautiful and it should remain undiscovered." You finish and wait for Katsuki's response. He considers you with an impassive gaze. You shift nervously under the scrutiny. Finally he exhales, as though exasperated, and chucks a chunk of meat at you. You catch it regrettably, the squishy bloody mess uncomfortable in your hands. "You must be dying without meat in there, human. All that fey food," Katsuki comments as he continues to tear into the main carcass. You relax your shoulders, taking the gesture for what it was, acceptance. You smile. "I'll admit, I'm not used to it. The foreign fruit that grew on the trees and shrubs had been different, but not necessarily bad. I can't eat raw meat though," you tell Katsuki. Katsuki rolled his eyes. "Humans are so weak." He snaps a rib bone from his carcass and hands it to you. You nod your thanks and skewer the meat onto the bone. "You better leave when you're supposed to. If you overstay your welcome, I will be sure to let you know, human," Katsuki says, flexing his claws. You glance at the deadly weapons. "I would be grateful if you let me know with your words and not killing me in my sleep." Katsuki laughed obnoxiously. "I'll think about it, human."